Hello guys, I will upload this video for you so you can understand a little bit better what second conditional is and how to use it. So remember to check this video before you do the assignment for today so you can reinforce the knowledge from the last topic. So without further ado, let's start with the explanation. First, we need to know the following. What is the second type conditional? You are seeing right now on the screen the definition of it, and the second type conditional, it is also called the conditional for unreal or imaginary situations. Why unreal or imaginary situations? Well, the reason is that there are situations that we imagine that could be real at some time. That's why they are called in this way. Normally, we're going to use them to talk about hypothetical situations that may happen or may not happen depending on the case. The structure of the second type conditional, as you can see over here, includes just two things. Just two things that it is important to remember. I don't want to confuse you that much with them, but the first one is what we call the if clause, and the other one is what we call the main clause. So what's the if clause and what is the main clause? Just keep in mind the following. An if clause is any sentence that starts with the word if and has a subject and a verb. And the main clause is any sentence that just have a subject, a verb, and a complete meaning. What do I mean by a complete meaning? I mean basically that they don't need anything else in order to make sense. But the if clauses, they need to be attached to a main clause to make sense. For example, if I said if I had $1 million alone without this part that you see over here, now probably you will be asking to me, if you had $1 million, what is going to happen? What are you going to do with them? How are you going to use them? You need extra information to have the idea completely. So in the other case, the main clause, I can say, I would buy a big house. In that case, that's a sentence, and that doesn't need anything else in order to make sense. Those are the only two elements. Remember, the if clause and the main clause. So now that we know the elements of that, now we're going to start talking about the second conditional and how it is formed. So let's jump into it. So the first thing that we need to know is that the if clause that we see over here can be placed either at the beginning or at the end of the sentence. If you put the if clause at the beginning, you have to include a comma. Like for example, let's take a look at this little sentence that we have over here that says, I would buy a big house if I had $1 million. So this is the main clause, this is the if clause. Here, since I have the if clause at the end, I don't need to add a comma. But imagine that I have the different order. I have this sentence first and this second. I said, if I had $1 million, comma, I would buy a big house. That would be the only difference in that regard. That if you put it at the beginning, you need a comma. If you put it at the end, you don't need it. We use different forms of the verb in each part of the second conditional. So for example, in the if clause, as you see over here in the presentation, you are going to include the following elements. First, you have the if, that it's just a word, that's the meaning of it. You will have any subject that you want, so it can be the name of a person, pronoun, the name of an animal, or a place. Then you will need a verb in simple past, okay? Any verb in simple past that you can think of, and finally a complement. In the case of the main clause, you will need the following elements. A subject, you're going to need the modal verb, either would, could, or might. In this case, all of them mean the same. The only difference is to add flavor to the things. And finally, the verb, that is going to be any verb you want, but the difference is that here the verb has to be in present. So that means that it's not going to include any changes. It's not going to be in the past. It's not going to include an S. It's not going to include an ES. It's not going to include ED. Nothing of that. Let's continue. Using the second type conditionals. When they use the second type conditionals, as I was explaining at the beginning, we use them to talk about unreal or situations that are not true or are not possible. Pay attention to this, not possible. In the present or the future, things which don't or won't happen. This means that we are talking about situations that right now, in the moment that we are, cannot be possible, and in the future will not be possible as well. Let's look at some example. We have this sentence, if I were you, I would drive more carefully in the rain. What is the hypothetical situation over here? Well, that I am not you. Obviously, this is unreal because I cannot be you. You are you, I am who I am, and we cannot change that. We cannot change bodies. And that's why it is important to remember. Paula would be sad if Jan left. What is the unreal situation over here? That Jan will not leave. That means that he's going to be here, or she is going to be here. I don't know if Jan is a boy or a girl, but he or she is going to be here forever. She's not going to go anywhere. She's going to be with Paula the rest of their life. That means that this is not going to happen. If dogs have wings, they will be able to fly. Obviously, dogs do not have wings. That's why we are talking about the possibility that in some cases or in some ways, a dog may have some wings that probably will never happen. We will never see them. But that makes them impossible. So we're going to use them to talk about impossible situations. Like if I had superpowers for saying something, I will save the world. Or if I had $1 million, probably I will buy a luxury car. And all of those situations are not real because I don't have those resources and I don't have those things that I'm talking about. Let's see some more examples. We have this one. If I won the lottery, I would travel around the world. Though it is unlikely that I win the lottery because that's almost impossible that you win the winning ticket and that you get a lot of money. If I knew his name, I could tell you. That means that I don't know his name. I don't know who the person that you're talking to me about is, so I cannot tell you anything about him or her. If I didn't have a headache that means in Spanish dolor de cabeza, I would go to the party. That means that this is the reason why I cannot go to the party. That's another thing to know about conditionals, that the if clause is a condition and the rest is the result. Like, in order for this to happen, this needs to happen first. If I became the president, I would reduce the salaries of all the politicians. Though this is unlikely because probably I will never become the president. We have a president already, and probably I'm too old for the charge or I don't have the credentials for it. The second type conditional tenses. We have three tenses in the second type conditional. The negative, and the interrogative tense. So that means that all of these are the three forms that they can use. For the affirmative form, we're going to use this structure. In the if clause, we're going to have the word if, we're going to have the subject, and we're going to have a verb in simple past. And if you want, we can add a complement. Like, for example, if I ate that cookie. If is the same if, subject is I, ate is the verb in simple past, and that cookie is the complement. And remember, you put a comma. Then in the main clause, we're going to have these elements. We have the subject, that in this case is I. We're going to have any of those modals. In this case, I chose would. We have the verb in present, that is get, and you have any complement, that in this case is sick. Now put everything together and it says, if I ate that cookie, I would get sick. That means that in this case, we're talking that if I do this, this will be the consequence. If, then we have the negative form that it follows exactly the same pattern. What's the only difference? That you include a not over here, okay? That's the only difference, that a not is included. You have if, you have the subject that is I, you have the simple past verb that is went, the past form of go, the complement, and in the main clause you have the subject, the modal verb, you have the word not, remember that is the only element that we add to, and we have the verb. So you can say if I went to Germany, I could not live there. The reason why, because the culture is different, the winter is different, the climate is different, and everything is different over there, and it will be really difficult to adapt to live in that place. So in that case, we are saying that then the word not will go after the modal verb, but before the verb. That's the only thing that you need to remember between the affirmative and the negative. The affirmative doesn't have the not, the negative has the not after the modal, but before the verb. And the interrogative form, normally the interrogative form can be used with a double H word at the beginning, like why, what, when, or where. But here we're going to use them without it. So you can have either of the models, okay? But in this case, we are going to erase one of them, that is might, because we cannot make questions with might. This is a mistake. So we're just going to make questions using would and could. Then you are going to include either would or could. You're going to include the subject, then include the verb, that is in simple present, and the complement. And then the next part, you're going to have the word if. You're going to have the subject, and you're going to have the simple past plus the complement. So you can say, would you come with us if you were free tonight? Would you come with us if you were free tonight? Like, we're talking about a hypothetical situation in the case that somebody is free to come with us to the place that we're going. We can change this question, and for example, I can, for example, let me change it and add the word, sorry by this if you cannot see it correctly, but it is going to be a when. Like, for example, I can tell you, when would you travel to Germany if you are given the opportunity? Okay, when would you travel to Germany if you are given the opportunity? Like I'm telling you, at some point in time, you will be given the opportunity. So when would you go? When? And that is the way in which we ask the questions. Like, remember, if somebody asks you a question with second type conditionals, you can answer like, would you come with us if you're free tonight? I would answer, if I am free tonight, I will go with you. Or I will go there. Or I will accompany you. Or if we have another question like, what would you do if you were in the zombie apocalypse, for saying something? If I were in the zombie apocalypse, that's my answer. I would run to a bunker and hide myself over there. And that is the explanation for second type conditionals, guys. I hope this video is helpful for you. I hope that everything is clear up for you on this topic. And if you have any question, let me know on the chat or let me know on the platform, and I will gladly answer them to you. Remember that learning includes making mistakes, and learning includes asking questions. So you can ask questions at any moment. Don't you worry. I will be there to help you out. And I see you on the next class. Bye-bye.